Hey, I am here with Vincenzo and Alison, who, oh my God, there's been some stories over the years with you guys, and hadn't seen you for a few years until very recently and got to spend time with you in the SAS in America. And you have an amazing story together. You have a beautiful relationship that was essentially born out of circling.
Yes.
And you've been circling for 8 years now, and I would love to hear this story directly from you, and I'd love people to hear about it. And I'd love to explore just a little bit of how circling is helpful in creating a relationship like this as well, because you're not the only ones out there who have used the practice to discover a beautiful romantic connection and sustain it.
Yeah, like what you just said about how circling it's helpful to create a relationship. I mean, to me, that is, I feel reborn with circling. Because you know some about my history with circling. Um, I got involved into circling during my divorce. A divorce, and all I wanted is to just get away from a relationship. I just wanted to, um, just restart. And what I got from circling was being able to connect with myself in a deeper way, and that created the possibility for me to really show up in relationship where I was not doing that before. I was not showing up. I was worrying about fixing or being what I thought I should be instead of being myself, and always looking for my partner um, for indication of am I doing well or not as a partner. And in the process, I was losing myself. And then I realized that that was a theme of my relationships my whole life. I would just get out of a relationship, be by myself, get more in touch with myself. And the moment I would get in touch with myself, I would attract women like crazy. I don't even know how it happened, but after a month or two that I would be by myself single, I would have like choices. And then, of course, you want to be in a relationship. Of course, I wanted to be in a relationship. So I would start a relationship. And the moment I would start a relationship, I would start focusing on the other person, losing touch with myself, and pretty much become a shell of myself. I mean, who wants to be in a relationship when the other person is not bringing anything? All I was doing was, yes, of course, dear, or what do you want to do? Or thinking, is she gonna be okay with that? And not be in touch with who I was in relationship. And that, it will last a year, 2, 6 months, 5 months, and then I will break up. Because then I would be reaching a point where I was not happy anymore in the relationship because I wasn't getting anything out of it. And the other person, the same. Like, I don't recognize you anymore. And that has been the pattern in my life. Until with circling, I realized I need to be myself in the relationship, and really understanding what that means and how to connect with the other person, and make sure also that the person is seen and heard within the relationship. So that, to me, changed everything. That and I found like a gift that I kept pushing down. I feel I have a very good capacity of connecting with myself and feeling my feelings. But because of how I was brought up, being a man, if you show emotion, you show weakness. You shouldn't. And that conditioning really got me pushing down all my emotion and sensation without even thinking that I was doing it. It was just automatic. And through circling, I was able to go back to my true self, what I knew how to do that I totally forgot. And that helped me so much in relationship. Being able to show up in the relationship has been a gift for me and for our relationship. And learning how to do that. How do you show up? How you're not a dick, right? I mean, like, but also not a wuss. Like, finding the balance of showing up for yourself and also keep in mind that there's another beautiful being that's part of your life, and you want to take care of her.
That's really amazing to hear you share about all that, because I'm a psychotherapist. I work a lot with couples, and so many of the men that I work with have this struggle of really accessing their emotions. And I see so many wives who are so frustrated. They feel alone in the relationship because they don't feel their partner's presence. They don't feel them showing up fully, and they're frustrated with that. And part of the work is to help the husbands, I find in particular, to really access more of their emotions more spontaneously in the moment, and learn how to express them. And bringing circling into that work has just helped men become what Vincenzo just described, which is really in touch with themselves, emotionally available, and more present and mindful. And the women love it. I love it. It has been such a treat to be on this journey with Vincenzo, using circling every single day in our relationship, because I get to see so much of his vulnerability. And vulnerability is sexy. A lot of people don't realize this. They push down their vulnerability. They have this story that if I show who I am, I'm not going to be loved. But the opposite is so often true. The stuff we push down is often the very material that's going to make you the closest. That stuff that you're the most scared to share. It really bonds you. And to see him go there, especially as a male, I'm just so grateful and so appreciative. I feel so lucky to have a partner like this who can be so emotionally available. And I feel like we were both raised in circling, because I came to circling 8 years ago and met Vincenzo. We were just acquaintances for a year. And then one night he came up to me and he said, "Why don't you look me in the eye in the circle?" And in that moment, I decided to be rigorously honest, as we do in circling. And I told him I didn't trust him. I had all these stories about him, that he was a player, that he was dating a lot of women, and coming out of this divorce with guns blazing, and dating like crazy, and all these stories. And I shared that with him, and he was just like, "Tell me more." He was so intrigued and invited me to share more. And he just listened and listened. And one of the circling facilitators was eavesdropping on our conversation and got frustrated with our going in circles and said, "Alison, what is Vincenzo going to have to do to get you to trust him?" And I said, "He's going to have to pursue me outside of circling." It came to me. I realized that I wanted to feel really desired, that would help this trust issue. And so he offered to walk me home, and we sat in the park and we kept circling. And it went on for 3 hours. and we got locked in Madison Square Park in the middle of New York City. We had to climb over the fence to get out. And then I was afraid he was going to try to kiss me. And I used circling in a way that I had never been so honest with a guy. I'd always just like gone along with the first kiss. But instead, I connected with myself and I said, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that you're going to try to kiss me and I don't feel ready. I want to kiss you at some point, but not right now. And I shared that complexity with him. And he was like, tell me more. He was so excited to hear me be so honest, I think.
I was like, wow, she wants to kiss me. That's a good news.
So
I was so happy to hear that because I wasn't sure that, there was going to be, because the other thing with, with circling, you sometimes get this deep connection with women, but there might not be a romantic, a connection. It might be like, oh, we were connected. And it's so nice, but I don't find you attractive in that way. And that's like a very tricky part of circling, like being able to accept that, sometimes, it happened to me in the beginning. Like I would connect so deeply with women and I would be like, oh my gosh, we're gonna make out, right? And then realize like, well, that's not necessarily the case. It's just like we are connecting deeply in the moment as human beings, but it doesn't mean that there is an attraction here, or even if there is an attraction, there is an availability to move forward with that attraction. But she might be with someone, engaged otherwise. So there was that moment of, okay, what's going on here? I this is beautiful. We have been spending so much time together. It was like in the middle of the night and we were locked into this park and now it was time to say goodbye. And I was like, okay, what, so I was really happy to hear that, that made me, it was like, oh, okay, good.
So
this is going somewhere.
We didn't kiss, but it was so sexy to talk about not kissing, which is an incredible circling tool that we have used in our relationship over the years, where we will talk about something we're afraid to talk about. We'll say, I'm really nervous about bringing this up. And we'll talk about what is it like not talking about it? Or what is it like not kissing? So we started to process like, oh, there's this tension.
It's like foreplay to the next level.
Yes.
It's just like you never did foreplay if you haven't circled while in it, because that is totally different dimension. It's just like really holding in all your passion and desire and in that being with the other person. I mean, that is mind-blowing, when that happens, that you can be not acting on your sexual and romantic drive and be with the person in it. I mean, that is like, whoa, what is this? I've never done this. It's that you act on it or you're by yourself, like, trying to navigate it. But being with the other person in it, it's just like, it was mind-blowing to me that I was able, we were able to do that.
Yeah. It was amazing.
And that happened in our first date. That, like foreplay where we were like testing each other, but not making the move, but talking about wanted to make the move.
Right.
It was like, whoa, it created magic.
Yeah. And on our first date, we were driving to the beach and he put his hand on my knee in the car and I just froze. I was so uncomfortable with his hand on my knee and he was driving. He looked at me and he slowly took his hand off my knee and he said, what's coming up for you right now? Which is such a great circling question. And I said, I was so nervous when you put your hand on my knee. And we talked about my nerves and my discomfort. And once we talked about it, he looked at me and then he knew it was okay to put his hand back on my knee. I think you might have even asked if it was okay. And I said yes. And he put his hand on my knee and all of the tension melted away because I had named it and we processed it together. It made us so much closer. And then by the time we got to the beach, I was ready. I was ready to kiss him. And we made out like From Here to Eternity movie on the beach. And it was incredible because of this buildup and the circling that we were doing at the time. And I remember just running into the water after we kissed and feeling so free and just liberated in my honesty, that I've been more honest with this man than I had ever been with someone before. And he was still liking me through it. He wasn't rejecting me or judging me. And it was just this incredible feeling of liberation. And we continued to practice that level of honesty and being in the present moment, every moment, for an entire year. For an entire year, we did not talk about the past or the future without saying it in a circling context and bringing it back to the present moment. So what's it like to talk about that thing that happened in your childhood? You know, we sat on my couch one time for 8 hours straight. We got up, we were so stiff. We couldn't believe we had just circled for 8 hours straight nonstop. And it was incredible, the peaks and valleys that we went through in our emotions, just tracking how we felt in the present moment.
And the images that came up while in connection for so long.
It was incredible.
Like we became animals and
yeah,
playing with each other. Like it was wild. It was really wild.
It's like it taps into your unconscious, almost like having a dream where you start to get these images. And I'm noticing that I'm having this image of us on a sailboat and it's rocking from side to side. It's so calming. And I can hear the sound of the sail banging against the pole. And there's just this peace and calm. I remember having that feeling. And you saying, I have a feeling that this is gonna last a long time. This relationship, just in the very first days. And now here we are married 3 years later, and we owe it all to circling.
It's so cool to hear, and there's bits that I haven't heard before, and touches so much of my excitement of my similar kind of experiences, but also the uniqueness of yours. And I'm like, so there's, okay, circling helps us become more ourselves, which in a way is like, oh yeah, just be yourself. But often we don't even know that we're not being ourselves. That was my thing. Like, circling kind of revealed to me all these ways of like, oh, I'm not daring to be myself there. Wow, I'm actually anxious and I didn't even realize. And then you get these reflections. So you get these reflections to show you where you're not being yourself. And then you get tools to support you to land and anchor in yourself, and like to stay there and keep meeting people, even in discomfort and like when things aren't going where you think they should. So I'm hearing that you both had this capacity to really stay with yourself, and that led to magic in unique ways, like the kind of tensions that can be created in talking about like not being ready to kiss, like the eros that can be in that, and the play of just like dancing with whatever's actually alive for you both in these vulnerable places where there often isn't much consciousness.
I think like that the real gift of circling, because there are different practices that help you to get more in touch with yourself. You can meditate. What is unique of circling that to me is just a game changer for myself is the connection with the other person and sharing your feelings, your emotion, your body sensation to the other person. Because in my experience, if I don't put something in words, I never know if I'm really understanding it. I remember when I used to study, I would read a chapter and then close the book and be like, I got everything. And I got up and just tried to repeat what I learned. And it's like, oh, wait a second, that thing is not clear. But while I was reading it, and in my head, everything was super clear. So that process of explaining something to the other person is such an exercise of clarifying what is happening for myself first. For me, it's just like I'm telling myself what is happening in me, and somebody's witnessing that. Mm-hmm. And I have to be very clear, because I'm not just telling myself because I know what I'm feeling. I have to communicate that to the other person. So it has to be clear enough for the other person to understand. And sometimes the best thing is the person that you are in connection with asks you a question. It's like, what do you mean by that? And you're like, oh shit, what do I mean? I don't know what I mean. Like, it's such an incredible question that it just like, it's so important to stop and reflect on what you just shared and unpack a little bit more, because it feels like such a gift for myself that I get to, peel the layer of what I'm seeing to this other person. And at the same time, peeling the layer of my own consciousness, my own experience, because I have to share it. I'm sharing it with another person, and that makes it clearer. So I think, the connection, it's so important in this whole discovering of who I am. In my experience, has been a game changer, because I can meditate for hours and be in my head and everything is clear. But then the moment I get in touch with, connect with someone else and an emotion comes up, I'm like, what is this? Never happened when I was by myself sitting on the mat. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't happen. It's just the being in relationship where you really discover who you are. And I want to add something at what you shared about, being a man and being vulnerable. Yes, it's difficult for men. And what really makes it possible is having the container of being listened to from your partner. Because, it happened the other day.
We found that yesterday.
The other day it happened.
Yeah.
We had a conversation the day before yesterday night, and that was not happening. That was not a conversation. That was like we were bickering.
We weren't circling.
We were not circling. We were not allowing to see each other. Yeah. Allow the vulnerability to come up, because we were not in connection in that way. Yeah. But then the next morning, we were in a better place, and I asked for sometimes to talk, and I started being vulnerable, and Ali was listening. She was holding my vulnerability in the moment, and it just kept unraveling and unraveling, and it was so beautiful and freaking painful. It was really painful to feel the feelings that were in me. It was so beautiful to share with her and being held and accepted. So yes, it's important for the man to be vulnerable, be in touch with his own feelings. But what makes it really work and happen is having that container in the relationship of safety and acceptance of each other. And, like not blaming or shaming the other person, owning your own experience, like all the things that we learn in circling, that we learn in circling, but like, what is it happening for me, and not pointing the finger to the other person. Yeah.
And I want to add, it's not just the men who struggle with this being vulnerable thing. a lot of times I see couples where there's a more extroverted female and the male is more sort of contained and shut down. But once we start circling and we circle the male, he often opens up like rather easily. And the wife is like, who are you? Because he rarely has the time and space given to him, is my theory, to show up fully in the way that he does when he's circled. And then sometimes with the wife, it actually turns out that she has some blocks to expressing her own vulnerability that end up surprising her because she's more extroverted. And it's a very interesting contrast that ends up, that circling magnifies and brings out, is like, actually, you know, extroversion is not vulnerability. In fact, it can be a defense to avoid being vulnerable, to be so extroverted. And it's a discovery made in a lot of relationships where I bring circling into the couple, where it's a very eye-opening experience about what is vulnerability, who's able to be vulnerable, who's not, and how do we become more open with each other.
And the thing is, if you don't know that that is possible, if you've never done circling, if you've never been seen being vulnerable and accepted, you don't even know it's possible. You don't even know that that's something you can do.
Right. Because it's like another level. I mean, a lot of the things we're saying, you could say, oh, yeah, but it goes to another level that most people don't know exists.
Yes.
Right. And as a man,
So true.
If you don't know it exists, besides being a man or not, you know, if you don't know it exists, if you don't know that you can do it, how can you ask for it?
Yeah.
Like, I knew that what happened the night before was not us, was not what we signed up for, was not what our agreement is in our relationship. So the next day, I came in with, let's be with each other, let's connect, let's really be present with each other, so that you can see me and appreciate what I'm at, and I can see you and appreciate where you are, and we can come together. But if you've never done that, you're like, well, that's how it is. That's how relationship goes. I need to win it. I need to, you know, tell her, oh, this is how it goes, or you can do this, you can do that, instead of expressing vulnerably what happens for you when that happens. And bring your partner in. And she will realize, oh, that's, you know, that hurts so much. I didn't know. You know, most of the time, you know, we have our own, you know, we bring so much of our past in the present relationship that it's so difficult for the other person to really understand it. But like, we were connecting over the importance for me as an Italian man of having a meal together. How that is part of like how I was brought up, and how I feel like emotional even sharing this. How it's a way of expressing love and connection with your significant other, like just preparing a meal and having it together. Like how important that is for me. And you know, we have been together for over 6 years now, and she didn't quite understand that importance until, you know, I told her. And you know, because that was not her experience. You know, she was not brought up in an Italian family. That's what we do. You know?
Yeah.
So that is the power of circling, of being able to create that space where we can vulnerably communicate and share and really see each other.
And rage doesn't work. It never works, which isn't to say in circling, you can't say, I feel enraged. But if you start to escalate and yell or throw things, it doesn't work. But if you can come back and be vulnerable instead and get to the layers underneath that rage, to the vulnerable parts, the sad parts, the lonely parts, it's so much easier to hear that and take it in and process it. And that was the big change with us the other day, was going from rage to the vulnerability. And then we were able to really bond in our differences rather than gang up on each other over them. They became opportunities to connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking of like how difficult relationships can be and how difficult it can be to keep showing up or to circle well in your relationship, because it's the place that seems to bring up our deepest stuff.
Yeah.
So I like just being explicit about the challenges that are there, and that it's not just circling, obviously, that can help these things. Like many things can help these things, like obviously therapy and coaching, but in a way it's like tests your circling, the kind of deepest capacities that you develop in circling. It's like if you can embody them in your relationship, then you can steer your way through these things. And I think what I see in you guys, and I see in my relationship, and I see in Sean's and other experienced circlers, is like from orienting from that place, like not only do we sustain the relationship, but like the magic sustains. Like even years on, like of course there's going to be challenging periods and dullness or whatever, but each time we manage to connect in this new place that's been challenging, then there's like a whole new layer of intimacy, and like, oh yeah, my God, we've been together all these years and we haven't seen this, and like, wow, I'm feeling all these new feelings.
Yes, absolutely. We have a name for that phenomenon in circling. We call it the bubble. Because after we went to the beach on our first date, we got into the car and I noticed this feeling of peace and extreme connection. And I said, oh my God, I feel this feeling of like total serenity. Do you feel what I'm feeling? And he said, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like we're in a bubble in the car. And we just talked about the beauty of this feeling of safety and purity, and it was freedom, joy. And we call it the bubble. And it's that magical place that you get back to when you're circling, but it's not only a return, but it's a moving forward to another level. Like you're peeling this onion forever in your relationship. It never ends.
Exactly.
There's
no sense of it's going to get boring. There's no sense of like, oh, no, something else. It's like there's so much here. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is a big piece that a lot of couples don't know exists, is that there's so much more intimacy they can explore in their relationship if they just get the roadmap to the door that goes there. And circling gives you that map, gives you the script to get there.
That feels like a nice kind of completion to me, unless there's anything more you want to.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just complete.
Yeah, really nice to kind of compare notes and just get your full experience of it and the unique beauty of it. And yeah, I feel like we want to share this kind of innocently because I mean, it's kicked our ass along the way for sure. I think I can say that, speak for you as well as myself. Like, it's not been easy, but it's like, it does lead to something very special that I know a lot of people want.
Yes.
Yeah, this is my take of approaching relationship. You know, we have been sold this fairy tale of like a happily ever after, right? That is gonna be, you get married, you find the right person, it's gonna be beautiful. The rest of the day, you're never gonna argue. That's bullshit. What it's really my fairy tale, it's to go through life and what life can throw at you with this kind of connection, with somebody that can support you, somebody that you can have an argument with, and then go back and really see eye to eye and move forward with it. That is the fairy tale to me. It's a relationship where you can be yourself and not being judged or shamed, but be seen for the beautiful person that you are. That is the fairy tale to me. And that's where I proposed to Alison. Just to put another thing on this, it was 4th of July. It was like at the eve of the 4th of July, and she came back from work, and she was upset. There was something that it was, you know, she was really not having it, and she was judging herself because she wasn't showing up lovingly or wasn't showing up the way she wanted to show up. And I remember after we had a meal, we sat on the sofa, and I told her, like, I just want to be with you in whatever you are. Tell me more. Tell me what's going on right now for you. I just want to understand, what is it? You know, if you feel alone right now, I want to be in the loneliness with you. I just want to see you more and more. And we went on this for an hour, and I had the ring ready. I had everything. We had this weekend plan that, you know, I was going to propose. And then I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I want to understand you better. I want to be with you in whatever it is that is happening for you. And that's when, you know, I decided to go pick up the ring and propose. And that night, the fireworks started the moment that I proposed. It was crazy. Yeah. It was crazy.
But that was one of the most beautiful things I had ever heard, was I want to be with you in the loneliness. It like started to heal something inside me to hear that. And that was the moment that we committed to spend the rest of our lives together. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, it was not the way I planned it, but it was so much better than the way I planned it.
Thank you, John, for having us here.
Very welcome.
Yeah. For hearing our story.
Yeah, it just like reliving those moments. It's just like so beautiful and magical for us.
Yeah. Thank you both.